After 38 years of marriage, my husband told me he didn't want to celebrate his 70th birthday. But inside his blazer pocket, I found a reservation for a luxury cruise. 7 cabins booked, paid for with our joint credit card. Every child's name was on that list. Every grandchild's name, too. My name was nowhere to be found. I smiled, because that night, I decided they would never forget what I was about to do. But before we get into the story, please support us by liking and subscribing right now. I also want to say hi. Leave your name, city, and the word present in the comments. I want to know where you're listening from, even in faraway places. My name is Beverly, and at 67 years old, I discovered I was invisible to my own family. Let me start with the day everything changed. It was a Tuesday in October, one of those gray sky New England days in Hartford, where the leaves are already damp on the ground and the air has that crisp, biting chill. I had just gotten back from Whole Foods, lugging heavy paper bags because Arthur never offered to help. In nearly 4 decades of marriage, I can count on one hand the number of times he went to the grocery store with me. I walked into the house through the mudroom, as always. I dropped the bags on the kitchen floor and heard the TV blaring in the den. Arthur was there, in his usual spot, buried in that $2,000 leather power recliner he bought when he retired 3 years ago, a chair he picked out himself without even glancing my way for an opinion. I started putting the groceries away, a whole roaster for Sunday dinner when the boys would come over, celery and carrots for the beef stew Arthur liked, that expensive wedge of imported brie my eldest daughter-in-law always expected. I'd been doing this shopping every week for decades, always thinking about what everyone else wanted to eat. "Beverly!" Arthur shouted from the other room without getting up. "Grab me a Budweiser." I stopped what I was doing, opened the fridge, grabbed the bottle, popped the cap, and took it to him. I set it on the coaster next to his chair. He didn't even look up. His eyes were glued to the NFL game. "Thanks," he muttered, more out of habit than gratitude. I went back to the kitchen, wondering when the last time was that someone truly thanked me for something. Not that automatic, empty thanks. A real thank you, looking me in the eye. I was drying my hands on a dish towel when I remembered I needed to take Arthur's navy blazer to the dry cleaners. He had a Lions Club gala the following week and always made a fuss if his suit wasn't pristine. I went to the master bedroom, opened the closet, and grabbed the jacket. Out of reflex, I ran my hands through the pockets to check for loose change or pens. Arthur was notorious for leaving receipts, peppermint wrappers, and sometimes even $20 bills in there. My fingers touched something different, a folded piece of thick, glossy paper. I pulled it out and unfolded it. It was a confirmation from Celebrity Cruises, a booking. Departing from Port Miami on December 15th, destination, Eastern Caribbean. A 7-day voyage, 7 cabins reserved. Total cost, $47,000. My heart hammered against my ribs as I read the guest list. Cabin 1, Arthur Miller and Martha Miller. Martha was his older sister. Cabin 2, Bradley Miller and Courtney Miller, our eldest son and his wife. Cabin 3, Dustin Miller and Tiffany Miller, our middle son and his wife. Cabin 4, Logan Miller, our youngest, the bachelor. Cabin 5, Zane Holloway and Sienna Holloway, Arthur's nephew and his wife. Cabin 6, Brenda Stevens and Richard Stevens, Arthur's cousin and her husband. Cabin 7, Hunter Holloway and Kaylee Holloway, another nephew and his wife. 7 cabins, 14 people, the 3 sons I carried and raised, the nephews I hosted every Thanksgiving for 30 years, his sister, whom I tolerated even when she made snide remarks about my stuffing in front of the whole family. And my name was nowhere. I read it again and again. I scanned every line, every bit of fine print. Maybe it was a typo, maybe I was listed elsewhere, but no. The reservation was explicit. Arthur Miller and Martha Miller would share a cabin, not Arthur and Beverly. My hands began to shake, not from sadness, from something I hadn't felt in a long time. Rage, a cold, quiet rage that started in the pit of my stomach and rose slowly. I sat on the edge of the bed, still clutching the paper. The room I had shared with that man for 38 years suddenly felt like a stranger's house. The eggshell walls he chose, the brown comforter he thought matched everything. The framed print of mallards flying that he brought back from a hunting trip and hung up without asking me. Nothing there was mine. I closed my eyes and tried to remember the last time Arthur asked me what I wanted. I couldn't. I looked at the paper again. The payment date was there. October 3rd, 3 weeks ago. Paid with our joint credit card. The same card he'd used to criticize me if I bought anything for myself. Beverly, do you really need another sweater? Beverly, that face cream is way too expensive. Beverly, we need to save for the future. $47,000 for a party I wasn't even invited to. I tucked the paper into the pocket of my cardigan. I hung the blazer back up and shut the closet door softly, as if I were guarding a grave secret. I returned to the kitchen in silence. Arthur was still in the den, laughing at something on the TV. He had no idea I'd found it. He had no idea that, in that moment, something inside me had snapped forever. I started preparing dinner. I chopped the vegetables with precision, as I always did. I seasoned the chicken exactly the way he liked it. I set the table for two, using the wedding china I'd meticulously cared for all these years. But while my hands were on autopilot, my mind was miles away. I was replaying the last 38 years. Every sacrifice, every time I swallowed an insult from his family, every time I gave up something I wanted so they could have what they needed. I had given up my career as a registered nurse when Bradley was born because Arthur said a child needed their mother at home. I never went back to work because there was always something. Another kid, the house, his corporate events, family reunions. I became the invisible woman who kept the engine running while everyone else lived their lives. And now, at 67, I was discovering I wasn't even worth an invitation to a birthday party. Arthur appeared in the kitchen when dinner was ready. He sat in his usual spot at the head of the table. I served his plate first, as I always did. "Listen, Bev," he said while cutting his chicken, "about my birthday in December." I looked up. My heart was pounding, but I kept my face neutral. "I don't want a party this year. 70 is just a number. Let's just keep it quiet, just the two of us. Maybe a nice steak dinner here at home." He lied, looking me right in the eye, without hesitating, without blinking. "That's fine," I said, my voice as smooth as silk. "Whatever you want, honey." He smiled, satisfied, and went back to eating. And I sat there, watching the man who promised to love and honor me until death did us part. The man who was planning a $50,000 trip with the whole family, without me. That night, I barely slept. I lay there in the dark, listening to Arthur snoring beside me, and I started making plans. Friends, every story I tell you is released every day, but YouTube will only show them to you if you tap the red subscribe button. Please do it now while I'm speaking. Tap subscribe, turn on notifications, and you'll never miss a story. Have you done it yet? Thank you. The next morning, Arthur left early to play golf with his buddies. It had been his routine since he retired. Golf 3 times a week, lunch at the country club, home in time for the dinner I prepared. He didn't even ask what I did while he was out anymore. I think he imagined I just sat there like a potted plant until he returned. As soon as I heard his Ford F-150 pull out of the driveway, I went into his home office. Arthur had a computer there, the one he said was for the family finances, but only he ever touched it. I knew the password. He used the same one for everything. His birthday followed by the year he graduated from UConn. Men are predictable like that. I logged into his email. What I found was worse than I imagined. There was a group thread. All the kids, the nephews and his sister Martha. The subject line was, "Dad's surprise, don't tell Mom." I read every message, every single one. Bradley, my firstborn, had written, "The cruise is going to be epic. Finally, a celebration for just the real family." Real family. I read those words 3 times. I, who gave birth to this man, who stayed up every night when he had a fever, who did his laundry until he left for college. I wasn't real family. Tiffany, my daughter-in-law, replied, "Courtney and I are so relieved we won't have to listen to Beverly complaining about the ship's food." I have never complained about food in my life. I always eat what is served in silence, even when I don't like it. But to them, I was the nag. Martha, Arthur's sister, wrote the message that hurt the most. "Arthur deserves this trip. Poor guy has put up with her all these years. At least now he can actually relax." Poor guy. Arthur was the victim. The man I served for 38 years was the one suffering. Dustin, my middle son, was the only one who asked, "Won't it be weird if Mom doesn't go?" And Arthur replied, "Leave it to me. I'll tell her I don't want to celebrate. She believes anything I say. She believes anything." I closed the laptop. My hands were ice cold. I went to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and drank it slowly. I needed to think. I needed to process what I had just read. For 38 years, I thought I had a family. I thought my kids loved me, even if they didn't show it much. I thought Arthur, though distant, respected me deep down. I thought I was part of something, but I was just the live-in help they didn't have to pay. The cook, the maid, the party planner, the gift buyer, the birthday reminder. I was useful, but I wasn't loved. I sat at the kitchen table and looked at the walls, the pictures I never chose, the appliances Arthur bought because they were on sale, the color of the curtains Martha suggested, which I hated but accepted to keep the peace. Nothing in this house was mine, not even the house itself. The deed was in Arthur's name only, because when we bought it, the bank manager said it would be simpler that way, and I agreed, like I agreed to everything. I went to the bedroom and opened my closet. My clothes took up maybe a third of the space. The rest was Arthur's. I looked at my worn-out sweaters, my jeans I'd had for years, my sensible but boring shoes. When was the last time I bought something beautiful for myself? I opened the drawer where I kept my jewelry. A few pieces from my mother, bless her soul. A pearl necklace I got for my 40th birthday. Simple earrings, nothing of real value. But there was one thing that was worth a lot. My grandmother's engagement ring. An old-fashioned diamond, over a carat, that had been in the family for generations. My mother gave it to me when I married. I kept it hidden, thinking I'd pass it down to one of my granddaughters someday. I held the ring and thought about the grandkids. Chloe, Bradley's daughter, was 19. She visited sometimes, but only when she needed money for college. Emma, Dustin's girl, was 16 and barely said hi when she came over for Christmas. I was just the grandma who gave gifts and cooked, nothing more. I put the ring back. That ring was mine, from my side of the family, from my grandmother, and I decided, right then and there, that it would never belong to anyone in this house. I spent the rest of the morning doing something I had never done before, researching my own financial life. I discovered Arthur had 3 bank accounts. I only knew about the joint one, where he deposited an allowance every month for household expenses. The other 2 were his alone. One had over $400,000 in investments. The other was a savings account with $180,000, nearly $600,000, and he complained when I bought a bottle of oil of Olay. The $47,000 cruise had come out of the joint account, the one I technically owned too, but I never spent a dime of it on anything that wasn't for the house. I opened the statements from the last few years, transfers to the kids I never knew existed, $20,000 for Bradley's new truck, $15,000 for Dustin's kitchen remodel, $30,000 for Logan to start a business that failed in 6 months, gifts for nephews, for his sister, for cousins, money flowing out without a word to me. I always thought we were doing okay, but had to be careful, that we needed to save for retirement. Arthur always said that. Bev, we can't just spend like that. Think about the future. And all this time, he had over $500,000 stashed away, while I clipped coupons at the grocery store. The rage that was born the day before grew. But with it came something else. Clarity. For the first time in decades, I was seeing my life for what it really was. Not what I wanted it to be. Not the lie I told myself to get through the day. I was a woman who was being used, exploited, discarded, and I was 67. I had no career, no income of my own, and nothing in my name but some jewelry and an old Subaru Arthur let me drive. Most women in my position would have cried. They would have confronted their husbands. They would have begged for an explanation. But I wasn't that woman anymore. That piece of paper in the blazer pocket had lit a fire I thought had gone out years ago. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me broken. I was going to do something else. I picked up my phone and called the only person who had always been in my corner, my younger sister, Joanne. She lived in Florida, a widow for 5 years now, living a simple but happy life. We talked every week, but it had been ages since we'd seen each other. Bev? She answered, surprised. I never called outside our usual time. Is everything okay? No, I said, but I don't want to talk about it over the phone. Can I come visit you next week? Of course you can. But tell me, are you okay? Is it Arthur? The boys? I'm fine, I replied. And it was true. For the first time in years, I was wide awake. I just need to talk to you in person. About some things. Joanne agreed. I hung up and started making a list. I had a lot of work to do, and very little time to do it. Arthur came home from golf late that afternoon, complaining about the humidity and asking for a lemonade. I served it with a smile, as always. He didn't notice a thing. Why would he? To him, I was just part of the furniture, something that had always been there and always would be. That night, while he watched the Red Sox game, I went back to his computer. I wrote down every account number, every balance. I took photos with my phone of every document I found. I emailed them all to a secret account I just created. Then I went to the closet and started separating what was truly mine. My mother's jewelry, some old photos, letters my grandmother had written me, small things that could fit in a suitcase. I wasn't leaving yet. Not yet. First, I needed a plan. Arthur's birthday was in December. The cruise left on the 15th. I had almost 2 months to get everything ready. They wanted a surprise? Oh, they were going to get one, but not the one they were expecting. The following week, I flew to Florida without telling Arthur where I was really going. I just told him I was visiting an old high school friend who was sick. He didn't even ask which friend or where she lived. He just grunted a fine and went back to scrolling through his phone. Joanne was waiting for me at the Fort Lauderdale airport. When I saw her, I almost broke down. My baby sister, now 63, was tanned, smiling, wearing a floral sundress and sandals. She looked 10 years younger since she became a widow. "Bev," she hugged me tight, "you're so thin. Is that man even letting you eat?" We went to her place, a bright condo near the beach. She made coffee, and we sat on the balcony, watching the palm trees sway in the breeze. "All right, spill," she said. "What's going on?" I told her everything. The paper in the pocket, the emails, the hidden accounts, the cruise I wasn't invited to, my own children talking about me like I was a burden. Joanne listened in silence. When I finished, her eyes were full of tears, but not from sadness, from pure fury. "I always knew that man didn't deserve you," she said. "From the very beginning. Remember I told you not to marry him?" I remembered. Joanne was 25 when I got married, and she didn't even come to the wedding. She said she had a bad feeling about Arthur. We fought over it and didn't speak for 2 years. "You were right," I admitted. "You were always right. So what are you going to do?" That was the question. What was I going to do? I spent 3 days at Joanne's. We talked, we cried, we laughed at childhood memories. She showed me what her life was like now. Simple, free, with no one to answer to. She woke up when she wanted, ate what she wanted, went to the beach whenever the mood struck. "You can have this too," she said one night over wine on the balcony. "It's never too late, Bev. You're 67, not 97. You still have a lot of life left." I thought about our parents. My father died at 71, my mother at 78. I could have 10, 15, maybe 20 years left. How much of that time did I want to spend serving a man who thought I was invisible? Before I went back to Hartford, Joanne gave me the number of a lawyer who had helped a friend of hers through a messy divorce. "Just talk to her," Joanne insisted, "just to know what your options are." I went back home with a clarity I hadn't felt in decades. Arthur didn't even ask how the trip was. He just complained that the fridge was empty and that he'd had to order Domino's twice while I was gone. The following week, I called the lawyer. Her name was Susan Miller, a family law specialist. We scheduled a consultation for Tuesday while Arthur was at golf. Her office was in a discreet building downtown. I walked in nervous, my hands sweating. I had never consulted a lawyer in my life. Susan was a woman in her 50s, short gray hair, a direct gaze. She asked me to tell my story, and I did. I showed her the photos of the bank accounts, the cruise cost, the emails I'd discovered. She listened to everything, taking notes. "Beverly," she said when I finished, "you have rights. After 38 years of marriage, you are entitled to a significant portion of the assets. Even if nothing is in your name, you contributed to that wealth. You gave up your career, you ran the home, you raised the children. That has legal value." I took a deep breath. It was the first time anyone had said that what I did had value. "The problem," she continued, "is that your husband appears to be hiding assets. These accounts you found, he never mentioned them to you?" "Never. That can be considered fraudulent concealment of assets. It's illegal, but proving it can take time and money. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about the $47,000 cruise, the money he gave the kids without asking me, the decades I spent pinching pennies while he sat on a hidden fortune. "I'm prepared," I said. Susan smiled. "Good. We're going to need documents, everything you can copy, photograph, or prove. Bank statements, tax returns, property records. Can you do that without raising suspicion?" I could. Arthur was sloppy. He left everything in his office, thinking I'd never go in there, that I was too simple or too submissive to question anything. In the weeks that followed, I became a spy in my own home. Every time Arthur left, I went into his office and photographed documents. I found out the house was worth nearly $800,000, that he had stocks in 3 different companies, that his 401k was much larger than he let me believe. I also discovered he had a $500,000 life insurance policy. And guess who the beneficiary was? Martha, his sister. Not me. That was another punch to the gut. If Arthur died, I'd get nothing. His sister, who hated me, would get $500,000. I showed everything to Susan. She shook her head, impressed. Your husband isn't just negligent, Beverly. He's calculating. He made sure you would have nothing if the marriage ended or if he passed away. What do? First, we changed the strategy. You're going to need money for the process. Do you have access to the joint account? I did. It was the only account I could touch. Then, before we officially file for divorce, you're going to transfer a lump sum to an account in your name only. Half of what's in there is legally yours anyway. Do that. Then we file the papers. I nodded. The plan was taking shape. But I still had one thing left. The cruise. The birthday party I wasn't part of. Susan, I said, I want to wait until December to make it official. Why? Because my husband planned a surprise party. A cruise with the whole family. Except for me. Susan raised an eyebrow. I want to give them a real surprise. On the day they board that ship, I want them to know the truth. Susan looked at me with a glint in her eye that looked almost like admiration. Beverly, I think we're going to get along just fine. If you want to know how this story ends and discover many more, hit the red subscribe button. It's free and it helps me a lot. November arrived with a biting cold. The trees were completely bare, and I spent my days pretending everything was normal while I prepared every detail of my plan. Arthur kept treating our marriage like it was some eternal, unchangeable thing. He complained about the coffee, asked me to iron his shirts, commented on the TV shows. Sometimes he even tried to be nice, in his own way. He'd bring me a magazine from the store, comment on the weather, ask if I'd slept well, and every kindness hurt more than the rudeness, because I knew it was all a facade. Behind that mask of a retired, quiet husband was a man who had spent decades lying to me, hiding money, and excluding me from my own family. The boys called sometimes. Bradley was always in a rush, asking if Dad was okay, rarely asking about me. Dustin with superficial small talk about work and the weather. Logan, the youngest, barely called at all. When he did, it was to ask for something. I answered those calls with my usual voice, the loving mother who forgave everything, the woman who was there to serve and smile. But inside, I was counting down the days. I opened a bank account in my name. For the first time in my life, I had something that was mine alone. I transferred $50,000 from the joint account in small amounts so it wouldn't trigger a fraud alert. Susan said I was entitled to much more, but that was enough to start. I also rented an apartment, a small one in a decent neighborhood far from where we lived. I paid 3 months' rent up front in cash. The landlord didn't even ask for many references when he saw the green. I started moving my things there little by little, one suitcase at a time. Clothes, documents, my mother's jewelry, the photo albums that were actually mine. Arthur didn't notice a thing. He never went into my side of the closet. He never looked at my things. To him, I was just background noise, always there, always the same. In early December, I got a call from Bradley. He wanted to confirm Christmas plans. Mom, this year is going to be different. We won't be able to come over on the 25th. Something came up. What came up? I asked, playing dumb. A trip. Dustin and Logan are going too. It's a last-minute thing. All of you? What about your father and me? Dad's going. Didn't you guys talk about it? I paused for effect. No, he didn't tell me anything. Oh, Bradley sounded uncomfortable. Well, ask him. But don't worry, Mom. You guys will have a quiet Christmas, just the 2 of you. Quiet. While they would be on a luxury cruise, living it up on money that was half mine. That's fine, honey, I said in the sweetest voice I could muster. Enjoy your trip. I hung up and sat in a kitchen chair. My hands were shaking with rage, but I wouldn't let it break me. I was almost there. In the second week of December, Arthur started acting weird. He was more attentive, almost affectionate. He brought home flowers. He complimented my cooking. One night, he even suggested we watch a movie together. I knew what it was. Guilt. He was feeling guilty for excluding me and trying to make up for it with crumbs of affection. Or maybe he was creating good memories so that when he got back from the cruise, I wouldn't suspect a thing. I accepted the flowers. I smiled at the compliments. I watched the movie sitting next to him, his hand on mine. And the whole time, I was thinking about the envelope hidden in my car. The divorce papers, ready to be served. On December 13th, 2 days before the cruise was set to sail, Arthur announced he had to go on a trip. "It's a reunion with some old co-workers," he said over breakfast. "In Miami. It'll last a week." "Miami in December?" I asked. "That sounds nice. The weather must be great." "Yeah, it'll be good to see the guys." I nodded and kept drinking my coffee. He watched me for a second, maybe waiting for more questions. I didn't give him the satisfaction. "Will you be okay by yourself?" he asked. "Of course. I'll take the chance to get some things organized around the house." He smiled, relieved. He probably thought I was the same old idiot. On the 14th, Arthur packed his bags. I helped him pick out his clothes, as I always did. I folded his shirts, organized his shoes, put his toiletry kit in his bag. He gave me a kiss on the forehead before he left. "Take care of the house," he said. "I'll call you when I get there." I waved from the door as the Uber took him away. And as soon as the car turned the corner, I sprang into action. I went to his office and grabbed the last few documents I needed. Then I called Susan. "It's done," I said. "He's gone. They board tomorrow." "The papers are ready," Susan confirmed. "Do you want me to have them served, or do you want to handle it yourself?" I thought about it for a moment. I had planned to have a process server hand them to him at the pier, right at boarding. It would be dramatic. It would be public revenge. But then, I thought better of it. "I'm going to do it differently," I said. "I'm going to be there, in person." December 15th dawned clear and crisp in Miami. I had arrived the night before on a flight I booked with my own money, in my own name. I stayed at a simple hotel near the port. I barely slept. I spent the night rehearsing what I was going to say, imagining their faces, wondering if I was doing the right thing. But every time a doubt crept in, I remembered the emails. Finally, a celebration for just the real family. Poor Guy has put up with her all these years. She believes anything I say. At 10 a.m., I was at the cruise terminal. The ship was massive, white and gleaming under the Florida sun. Thousands of people were crowding the boarding area, carrying luggage and wearing smiles. I wore my best dress, a navy blue one I'd bought specifically for the occasion. I did my hair. I put on makeup. For the first time in years, I looked in the mirror and felt beautiful. I found a strategic spot near the main entrance where everyone had to pass, and I waited. They arrived at 11:30 a.m., all of them together, a happy, excited group carrying carry-on bags and talking loudly. Arthur was in the lead, dressed like he was going to a country club brunch. His sister Martha was by his side, arm in arm, as if she were the wife. Behind them came Bradley and Courtney, Dustin and Tiffany, Logan alone with his headphones on, the nephews, the cousins, everyone, my children, my grandchildren, who weren't even there, but whose photos were on their grandfather's phone to show off to strangers. My family, my ex-family. I stood still as they approached. Arthur was the first to see me. He stopped dead in his tracks, as if he'd hit an invisible wall. "Beverly?" he said, incredulous. "What are you doing here?" The whole group stopped. All eyes turned to me. Martha made a face of pure disgust. Bradley looked at his father, confused. Dustin took a step back, as if he wanted to vanish. I walked toward them, slowly, calmly, every step measured. "Have a nice trip," I said, looking at Arthur. "Or should I say, happy birthday? How did you—" He started, but his voice failed him. "How did I find out?" I finished. "Arthur, you've been hiding money for 38 years. But hiding a paper in your blazer pocket? That was amateur hour," Martha snorted. "I knew this would be a problem. I told you, Arthur. I told you not to leave a trail." "You said a lot of things, Martha." I turned to her. "You said your brother put up with me all these years. You said I was a burden. You said a lot in those emails you thought were secret." Martha's face turned beet red. Bradley tried to step in. "Mom, we can explain. It was supposed to be a surprise." "A surprise?" I laughed. "Bradley, my name wasn't in a single cabin. You guys booked 7 cabins and there was no room for me. What kind of surprise is that?" "It was temporary," Arthur tried. "We were going to tell you later." "When? When you got back?" "Beverly, we went to the Caribbean without you, but we brought you a magnet?" The silence that followed was deafening. Around us, other families passed by, oblivious to the drama unfolding. I opened my purse and pulled out an envelope. "This is for you, Arthur." He took it, his hands trembling. He opened it. He read the first few lines. His face went pale. "Divorce?" he whispered. "You're filing for divorce?" "I am. And that's not all." I turned to my sons. "The lawyer will be in touch with you three as well, to recover the funds your father transferred over the years without my authorization." "What funds?" Bradley asked. "The $20,000 for your truck, the $15,000 for Dustin's kitchen, the $30,000 for Logan's failed business, the money he gave to nephews, to his sister, to cousins, everything that came out of the joint account without my knowledge or consent." Dustin took a step forward. "Mom, you can't do this." "I can, Dustin. Half of that money was mine. I worked for it too. Not directly, but every time I washed a load of laundry, cooked a meal, cleaned the house, cared for you when you were sick. Every time I gave up my career so your father could grow his. That has value, and I'm going to collect every cent." Arthur was still holding the papers, staring at them like they were written in a foreign language. "You won't get anything," Martha said with contempt. "My brother has lawyers. You're just a housewife." I smiled. For the first time in a long time, a real smile. "Martha, I might be just a housewife, but this housewife has copies of every single one of your brother's hidden accounts, the investments, the stocks, the life insurance policy that has you as the beneficiary instead of his wife." Martha went pale. Arthur closed his eyes. "That's illegal," I continued. "Hiding assets from a spouse. I have proof of everything, and my lawyer is very excited to take this to court." Logan, who had been silent until now, finally spoke up. "Mom, why didn't you talk to us first?" I looked at my youngest son, the baby I nursed for 2 years, the boy I drove to school every day, the teenager whose tears I wiped when his first girlfriend dumped him. "Because you wouldn't have listened, Logan. You guys never listen. I'm just the mom who cooks and cleans, the invisible woman you think will always be there, no matter how you treat her." I grabbed my purse and got ready to leave. "Enjoy the cruise," I said. "Celebrate your father's birthday. Drink champagne. Tan. Because when you get back, everything is going to be different." I turned and started walking. Behind me, I heard Arthur shout my name. I heard Martha swearing. I heard one of my sons trying to call me back. But I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I just kept walking, the warm Florida sun on my face and a lightness in my chest I hadn't felt in decades. The months that followed were the hardest and most liberating of my life. The divorce process was long and messy. Arthur hired expensive lawyers who tried everything to intimidate me. They claimed I had stolen money from the joint account, that I was emotionally unstable, that I was manipulating the situation. But Susan was brilliant. She had all the proof. The hidden accounts, the unauthorized transfers, the fraudulent insurance policy. One by one, she dismantled every argument Arthur's defense put up. The judge was harsh. He didn't like discovering that a husband had hidden nearly $600,000 from his wife for decades. He ruled that I was entitled to half of everything: the house, the investments, the savings, even the damn cruise, which Arthur had to reimburse me for. In total, I walked away with nearly $700,000, more than I ever imagined having in my life. The kids called me several times during the process. Bradley tried to talk me out of it. "Mom, you're destroying the family." Dustin said I was being vindictive. Logan simply stopped answering my calls. It hurt. Every call, every accusation, every silence hurt deeply. These were the children I had raised, the people I loved more than anything in the world. And they chose their father's side. But I understood. Arthur was always the favorite, the one who gave expensive gifts, the one with the funny stories, the one who never demanded anything from them. I was the one who checked homework, who set boundaries, who said no when I had to. It's easier to love someone who never asks anything of you. Joanne was my rock during all of this. She flew to Connecticut twice to support me during the hearings. She called me every day to check on me. She reminded me in the darkest moments that I had done the right thing. "You didn't destroy the family, Bev," she'd say. "The family was already broken. You just stopped pretending it wasn't." The divorce was finalized in June. 9 months after that day, I found the paper in the blazer pocket. I walked out of the courthouse with the papers in my hand, looked up at the blue summer sky and cried. Not from sadness, from relief. I sold the house in Hartford. I didn't want to live in a place full of memories that now felt fake. Every room reminded me of a lie. Every piece of furniture carried the weight of decades of pretending. With the money, I bought a condo in Florida, near Joanne, a place with an ocean view, full of light, with colors I chose myself. For the first time in my life, every detail was exactly how I wanted it. I painted the walls a light blue that Arthur would have hated. I put up pictures of flowers, not mallards. I bought a soft bed with white Egyptian cotton sheets. I filled the kitchen with spices and ingredients I wanted to try, not the ones others preferred. I learned to live alone. It was weird at first. The silent house, no one asking for anything, no one complaining. But slowly, the silence turned into peace. The solitude turned into freedom. I started doing things I'd always wanted to do but never had the time or permission for. Painting classes, morning walks on the beach, traveling to places I'd always dreamed of seeing. Paris, Rome, Lisbon. I made new friends. Women my age who had also started over. Widows, divorcees, single women. Women who understood what it was like to lose decades to a life that wasn't really yours. A year after the divorce, I got an unexpected call. It was Logan. "Mom," he said, his voice hesitating. "Can we talk?" I was on my balcony, watching the sunset over the ocean. I thought about saying no, about hanging up, about making him feel a fraction of the rejection I'd felt. But I wasn't like that. I never was. "Sure, honey. What's up?" He came to visit a week later. He arrived with dark circles under his eyes, thinner than I remembered. He sat on my balcony and stayed silent for a long time before speaking. "I should have backed you," he finally said. "With the cruise, the divorce, everything, I should have been on your side." "Why weren't you?" He looked down. "Because it was easier not to be. Dad, he was always the cool one, the one who gave stuff, who fixed things. You were the one who did the work, the one who organized, the one we didn't notice because you were always just there. And now you notice? Now I notice we were wrong. All of us." We sat in silence. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky orange and pink. "Logan," I said, "I love you. I always have. That never changed and never will. But I also love myself, and I spent too much time thinking those two things couldn't exist together." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "I get it, Mom. And I'm sorry." We hugged. For the first time in a long time, a real hug. No rush, no agenda, no hidden motives. Logan started visiting me regularly after that. The other boys took longer. Bradley was still resentful about the money he had to pay back. Dustin pretended like nothing had happened. But little by little, they started showing up. Short phone calls, quick visits. I didn't force them into anything. I didn't demand an apology. I didn't ask for explanations. I just left the door open and waited. Because I'd learned that you can't force anyone to love you. You can only create the space and see who chooses to fill it. 2 years after the divorce, Arthur died. A sudden heart attack while playing golf. Ironic in a way. He spent his life worrying about money, hiding it, hoarding it, and he died without taking a cent with him. I found out from Bradley. He called me in the middle of the afternoon, his voice shaking. "Mom, Dad's dead." I sat in the nearest chair and closed my eyes, waiting to feel something. Sadness, relief, anger, anything. But what came was a strange calm, like when you expect a storm and it just never arrives. "How are you doing?" I asked. "Not great. We're all pretty messed up." "I'm sorry, honey, truly." And I was. Despite everything, Arthur was a huge part of my life. We built things together. We had kids. We shared decades. The fact that it ended badly didn't erase everything that came before. I went to the funeral, not for Arthur, but for my sons. They needed to see that I was there, even after everything. Martha glared at me with pure hatred when she saw me. The nephews ignored me, but my sons came to hug me, all 3 of them. Bradley, Dustin, Logan, together. "Thanks for coming, Mom," Bradley said. "I know it wasn't easy." "He was your father," I replied. "This is where I belong." After the burial, I stayed for a few days. I helped organize things. I made food for the guests. I went back to being the mom who cares, who handles things, who is present, but this time by choice, not by obligation. On the last night, Logan found me. "Mom, I want to apologize for everything, for not supporting you, for believing Dad, for taking so long to understand." "You already apologized, honey, but I want to say it again and again. Until you know it's true. I smiled and touched his face. I know it's true. Since the first time. I flew back to Florida the next day. The plane took off over Connecticut, and I looked out the window at the houses getting smaller and smaller. Somewhere down there was the house where I lived for decades, the neighborhood where I raised my kids, the life I left behind. But I didn't feel nostalgic. I felt grateful that I had the courage to leave, to start over, to give myself a chance. At 69 years old, I was finally living the life I wanted. My routine now is simple. I wake up when I want. I drink coffee looking at the ocean. I paint on the balcony while the breeze blows. I meet Joanne for lunch. I take dance classes, if you can believe it. A woman nearly 70 learning salsa. I travel when I feel like it. Last month I went to Greece. Next summer I'm planning Japan. Places Arthur never wanted to see because he thought they were too expensive or too complicated. I made friends, real friends who like me for who I am, not what I can do for them. Women who understand my story because they lived similar ones. Men who treat me with respect, who ask my opinion, who listen when I talk. And yes, I'm open to love. I'm not actively looking, but if it happens, I'll be ready. Because I deserve to be loved. I always did. It just took me 67 years to realize it. My sons and I are rebuilding our relationship, slowly, carefully. Bradley is still too proud to admit he was completely wrong. Dustin is trying, in his own clumsy way. Logan is the one who got closest. He visits me every month. We cook together, watch movies, talk about life. The daughters-in-law still look at me with suspicion, but I don't care anymore. Their opinion of me doesn't change who I am. And who am I? I'm Beverly, a 69-year-old woman who spent most of her life trying to please others and finally learned to please herself. A mother who loved too much and was loved too little. A wife who gave everything and received crumbs. But I'm also a woman who had courage, who found strength where she didn't know she had it, who looked at a life built on lies and decided to rebuild from scratch. If you ask me if I regret it, the answer is complicated. Do I regret waiting so long? Yes. I could have made this decision at 50, at 40, maybe even sooner. I could have lived so much more. But I also know that every person has their own timing. And maybe I needed all those years to get strong enough to leave. Maybe that paper in the blazer pocket was the push I was waiting for, consciously or not. What I don't regret is acting, making a plan, going all the way. That scene at the port in Miami, with Arthur holding the divorce papers while the whole family watched, was the scariest and most liberating moment of my life. I was shaking inside, but my voice didn't shake. My hands didn't shake. I said what I needed to say and walked away with my head held high. Many women ask me how I had the courage. Friends I met after the divorce. Women who hear my story and see themselves in it, who are in unhappy marriages, being ignored, exploited, treated as invisible. I always say the same thing. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what needs to be done in spite of the fear. I was afraid of being alone. I was afraid of not being able to support myself. I was afraid of losing my children. I was afraid everyone would say I was wrong. And you know what happened? Some of those fears came true. I was alone for a while. I almost lost my children. Many people did say I was wrong, but I survived, more than survived. I flourished. And the fears that didn't come true? Solitude became peace. Financial instability became independence. The loss of my children became a new, more honest, more real relationship. If you are in a relationship where you aren't valued, where you are treated as invisible, where you work endlessly and never get anything back, I want you to know there is life on the other side. It's not easy, it's not fast, it's not painless, but it is possible. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to be heard. You deserve to be loved for real, not for convenience. I spent 38 years thinking that was just my life, that I had to accept it, that it was too late to change. I found the cruise ticket at 67. I finalized my divorce at 68. I started my new life at almost 69. If I did it, you can too. This morning, I woke up with the sun coming through my window. I drank coffee looking at the ocean. I painted a picture of yellow flowers that I'm going to give to Joanne. I had lunch on a patio with friends. I laughed. I laughed until I cried. I said what was on my mind without worrying about offending anyone. In the afternoon, Logan called. He said he's thinking about moving to Florida. He wants to be closer to me. I said I'd love that, but that he doesn't have to do it for me. It's not just for you, Mom, he said. It's for me too. I want to have time with you. Real time. Real time. It was all I ever wanted. So if you ask me if it was worth it, the answer is yes. 1,000 times, yes. That paper in the blazer pocket was the worst and the best day of my life. It was the end of one story and the beginning of another. It was the death of one Beverly and the birth of another. And this new Beverly is just getting started. If you enjoyed this story, click subscribe and tell me in the comments what part impressed you. There's more tomorrow. See you there. Would you like me to translate another story or help you adapt this for a specific video format?